I introduced a phrase, and that phrase was feedback is a gift. And we talked about when people give you advice, when people decide to coach you, everything falls in that same category. And that category is something that is a gift. And since then, people, of course, have been using the phrase, but they've also been asking me, well, Jason, how also do you give that gift? So this is my part 2 about evaluation. And when I think about evaluation, and someone that's really prominent in our society who evaluates people, I think of one person, Simon Cowell. Oh gosh, American Idol?
Yes.
Last season, or say X Factor, okay? Think of why Simon Cowell is such known as an evaluator. What is the one trait he has?
He's rude.
He's candid.
Right, he's rude, candid, brutally honest. He'll say something like, "That was the worst thing I've ever heard. Please never grace the stage again." And it's that British tone of absolute disdain that rings in your ear. It brings people to evaluate it, and at the same time, he's also a cautionary tale. Could you imagine if you worked for Simon Cowell? So when we evaluate, we're going to both use him as an example, and also, and the 3 points I'm going to introduce also is something to be mindful of. So the first thing I want to discuss is the idea that you should go for what you know. So this applies when you're at work, or whether you're evaluating someone for Toastmasters in a certain aspect. Stick to what you know. So if you use a form or some other form to give someone an evaluation, you may find yourself in a situation where you don't know everything on the form. I know the first thing that people give an example of is being a grammarian. They tell me, well, Jason, I don't know every aspect of grammar in the English language. Well, you speak the language, and if you speak the language, you know something about grammar because you had to learn it. Even if you can't put a big grammatical term like subject-verb agreement, or or say preposition usage, or proper structure of the sentence when used with prepositions. If you can't say that, that's okay. There's things that you do know. Stick to those things and make them part of what you evaluate and what you champion in front of others. That makes you the greater evaluator because that person can look to you from your source of strength. At the same time, we'll talk a little later about how to grow in other areas where you fail. Secondly, I want to make sure that you understand that if you write an evaluation, say in a Toastmasters manual, or even for, say, a work evaluation, it's the cornerstone for that evaluation. Your job as an evaluator is to highlight everything. Everything about what you see, hear, and understand from the person you're evaluating. But if you're going to speak to someone in a coaching environment or in a speech here, it's important that what you say is what's actionable, that gift that you actually can use. So you may highlight everything about a speech that you've heard in 5 to 7 minutes. It's more important in what you say, what that person should work on, what that person did well. It's not your opportunity to highlight everything in a form, everything in an evaluation. It's to say what that person can use. Think about the best ways that we give advice. Those things are in small, bite-sized pieces because of all the distractions in our minds. So stick to only the things that are most important. Let someone go back and digest what you've written as the other things to work on. Thirdly, increase your inventory. So you were saying to yourself, well, Jason, you told me that I should stick to what I know, and I only know so much. How do I then know more? You learn from others. You seek out resources. So I go back to the grammarian part of it, and people say, especially if I'm learning the language as a second language, I struggle because it doesn't always sound right when I say it. It doesn't sound right when I write it, or it doesn't always look the same as a native speaker. I challenge people, continue to hear the language in a way that makes sense. Great way to do that, Prime Minister's questions. When I say that, I mean that if you go and watch, say, on C-SPAN on Sunday nights, yes, I'm that boring to watch C-SPAN on Sunday night. British Parliament shows their questions they ask on a Wednesday of the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. And it is the most lively thing in politics, I think, in the world. Every parliament does this, but they do it in a way that is just fascinating. And not only that, but they use words, phrases, and techniques that we in the United States haven't been thought of to talk about. Some of the most boring parts of politics in the UK. So it intrigues you to use a language, and if you're newer to the language, you keep hearing it, it starts to make sense, it starts to click in a new way than what you're watching or taking in normally. There's several ways to do it, and there are ways to seek out advice, and remember, these things are a process. When you're even evaluated at work as part of being a professional, the best coaches and leaders understand that you're going to keep working at it as you keep building on the skill on top of the skill. So keep that in mind when you go with what you know. Great examples of people, let's go back to the reality show world. Gordon Ramsay. Now I know you're thinking, Gordon Ramsay, you mean the guy who cooks and yells at people and throws things? That's Hell's Kitchen, that is theater. If you ever watch any other Gordon Ramsay's programs like Kitchen Nightmares, like the F Word, he is brutally honest, just like Mr. Cowell, but he also will give you all of the tools to fix the things that don't work. That is why he's one of the great ones. Here's another great example, Bobby Bowden. Now, if you're not a football fan, you may not know the name, but he is the former coach of the Florida State Seminoles. If you go back to just any tape, he's not one of those coaches who gets up in your face and yells at you and tells you and uses really rough language, as many do. He'll wait. If someone does a really terrible play, he'll knows it's a terrible play. Everyone does, but his face is calm. And then when he's ready to talk to that player, if you catch what ESPN catches, it's a quick conversation about it and how to get to the next step and to make the next down happen. That's great evaluation. So I leave you with this. Building off the gifts conversation is important. Anyone can give an opinion, give advice, can give those gifts. Great leadership has a cornerstone of being good evaluators. So when you evaluate others in your life, in here, or in your professional role, or even at home, know that you're demonstrating great leadership. Mr. Toastmaster.